Live from a basement in Dubuque, Iowa.
I'll bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day.
30 minutes from the Field of Dreams and 4 hours from the closest professional sports team.
It's not a lie if you believe it.
On the banks of the Mississippi River.
I'm funny how? I mean funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you?
It's the Degenerate Sports Betting Show with Matthew Freedman.
That's what I do. I drink and I know things.
And now your host, Matthew Freedman.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Freeman, Matt F. the Oracle. Welcome to the Degenerate Sports Betting Show, brought to you by Best TV and sponsored by the FTN Network, where you can get all the season-long and daily fantasy and sports betting content your degenerate heart desires, including my fantasy football write-ups and NFL sides, totals, and player props. Use the highly original promo code Freedman for 20% off of your FTN subscription. That is Freedman for 20% off at FTN. Thanks for checking out the show. Subscribe to the Best TV channel on YouTube and rate, review, and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. All right, it is Friday afternoon, the final week of the NFL regular seasons, which means it is time for the final Propapalooza of the regular season. Producer Thomas Viola, sidekick on the controls, Connor Stewart, pasta, Titan of tomato sauce, Billy Joel Junkie, long-suffering Jets fan Tom. Also, perfect producer, by the way. But, yeah, I give compliments when they're semi-warranted. Tom, how is it going?
It is going very well. Very surprised at the compliment, but thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Good news is perfect. Also, good smelling producer now, thanks to some new soap that was sent to me over the weekend.
Soap. That's it. You know, it's a weird gift. It could. There are too many ways it could be read incorrectly, but I figured we have the connection. Yeah.
If we worked in an office together, I think I would have had a little more pause to it. Like, is he trying to tell me something?
Yeah.
But the fact that it's remote, I would hope indicates that is not the case.
Yeah, not the case. Although I will say, I mean, working remotely, possibility maybe you don't shower every day. I'm not saying that's a certainty. I'm just saying there's the possibility. So maybe something to remind you that it would be good.
Oh, for sure. The best part of working remotely, though, is I live in sweatpants now, and this is the absolute dream.
Yeah. I put on jeans whenever I'm going to do something important, just so I know that, like, hey, mentally up here, I need to know to be sharp because I'm now wearing jeans instead of pajama bottoms.
I wear jeans maybe 7 times a year.
Can you think of the 7 times a year you wear jeans? I would say, like, are these like on dates when you're wearing jeans? Yeah,
that is it. And even then, like, I absolutely detest jeans. I am the weirdest person on the planet like that. I always go slacks over jeans.
Slacks over jeans. That is interesting. Okay. Question. You just had, obviously very nice Christmas holiday with your parents. Before that, you had Thanksgiving time spent with your parents. When you are doing that, do you dress up for like the big family dinner, or do you just go in your like pajama bottom sweatpants?
Absolutely. I actually have special mountain sweats. Like I have a pair of sweatpants that are just like, the extra thick, extra pockets, extra comfortable that just live up in Tahoe. And so every time I get up there, boom, those just go on. And that is, if I am home, those are what I'm wearing for the whole week.
Because I could see, like, depending on the family, depending on the tradition, depending on like the work that goes into the preparation of the meal, some people might want like a certain level of decorum. And so I could see in those instances having to wear pants, like having to wear actual jeans if you don't dress up to the full category of like slacks.
Yeah, absolutely not, especially in our house. Like our Christmas tradition is actually wearing pajamas all day. Like we overtly make an effort to not get dressed on Christmas. And our house, it's more about like the meal. And so my mom's bigger foe. She doesn't care what we're wearing. It's just that if it's a big meal like that, like no one's gonna be on their phones at the table. Like, we're all gonna be talking to each other. That's what it's more about.
The pajama thing, I like that. Normally I'm in pajamas throughout the duration of Christmas. Absolutely love that. And I should say my wife this year actually bought us matching pajama bottoms, or not matching pajama bottoms, like a matching pajama set, which whatever, you do what you got to do for love. Also, I will say that like there was a purpose to the matching pajamas in that in her office there was an office Christmas party like with partners, like family, whatever. And so the theme of it was like pajama party. So
nice.
we wore these matching pajamas to that party. And so
Yeah.
we dressed up for that.
Now, did you make sure to wear shoes for the entire Christmas party?
Yes.
That is important. An important life lesson, as we know, is never take your shoes off as a Christmas party, because you never know when Hans Gruber is going to show up.
Right. Absolutely. That's true. And I just, I don't want to be the person who's like, I'm going to take my shoes off just to be extra comfy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, that's crossing the line for sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's get into it, Tom.
Indeed. Not a lot of games that we can really bet on with the props, both COVID uncertainty and, of course, the fact that some teams are simply not going to play their starters this week, and we're not sure who yet. Shout out to the Ravens, who will be playing Huntley again in a must-win game. That's going to be interesting. But first, let's go to Chiefs and Broncos, because you've got Noah Fant, and you're liking him to go under his receiving total here.
Yeah, I'm looking at Fant under 40.5 yards receiving at BetMGM minus 115. The Broncos, they have nothing left to play for. And this line, I think, is really inflated because of Fant's 92-yard performance last week. But we should contextualize that. Jerry Jeudy was out. Tim Patrick was out. I don't think Noah Fant is going to have the same usage this week with both of those guys returning. And he was in a smash spot matchup last week against the Chargers, who've been one of the most generous defenses to opposing tight ends. So just a totally different situation for him this week. I think we see much less usage coming down to his normal role. And honestly, probably even less than that, because the Broncos don't have much to play for. So you could see Albert O get some more usage, and Noah Fant and some of the starters get a little less usage in the second half of this game. So I think this is a pretty easy under to take.
Cowboys at the Eagles, no props are listed there. Bengals, Browns, same things. Real quick, I want to hit on Packers, Lions. Is it confirmed that they're resting their starters?
No, it's not confirmed. Let's be honest. So like LaFleur said early in the week, we're treating this like a normal game. And at that point, so let me just give a little more background here. The look ahead line for this was minus 11 Packers. After they clinched the number one seed, when this line opened, it was at -1. LaFleur said, we're going to treat this like any other game. And the line moved. It went past 3. It went to 4. It was even 4.5 at a couple of books. Wonderful. Like that's a gift to anyone who would be interested in betting the Lions. And since then, the line has crept back down a little bit. Devontae Adams has said that he doesn't expect to play the entirety of this game. So whatever LaFleur is saying, like, I don't think that is real. I imagine that the starters will play a few series, maybe, just so that they kind of have like the tune-up. They don't have like the full rust that comes with a bye. Maybe they score a touchdown, they get feeling good about themselves, and then they go to the bench. I think that is the way that this will play out. But there is some uncertainty as to exactly how much playing time, if there's any playing time for the starters. But LaFleur has said they are treating it like a normal game.
I mean, how many times have we seen this with these teams that just get too much rest here when they get that bye in the playoffs? If I'm LaFleur, I'm playing them at least a half, I think, because you're about to get a long break here before your next game. I'd personally prefer to at least have them play a decent amount of time, because we saw it when they didn't play in the preseason and they went out and they had that terrible game against the Saints in week 1. I don't want that happening again here. But that's just...
Yeah, and I will say, obviously, prop lines haven't been released yet for this game. When they are released, I will be looking very intently at the over for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Because, I mean, he's been crushing it the past 4 to 5 weeks, especially. And it's not like it's fluky. Like, he is getting targeted like a real number one wide receiver. I think the Lions are actually going to play to win, like the way that they have been doing the entire year. They're not a good team, but they're a hard-nosed team, and they're actually doing really well against the spread, against teams that are at least a tier above them. So I do think the Lions play hard. I think that means St. Brown ends up getting his normal usage. So I will be looking carefully to see where it is that this line settles for St. Brown, because I think there will be value on the over.
This feels like a very Dan Campbell game to me.
Yes.
I think I'm going to be taking the Lions here in this spot just because I could completely see them going out and winning this game against the Packers backups. They are going.
Yeah.
You're completely right. They're going to play in this one.
Yeah, like they're looking to win, looking to go into the offseason on the high of beating a divisional opponent, the number 1 seed, a team that could have the MVP, a team that is a contender for the Super Bowl. Like they will feel good about themselves coming off of a win, or like at least keeping it close, you know? So they are psyching themselves up for this game.
Plus my prediction here, the roles are going to be reversed next year when Aaron Rodgers defects to the Lions because he just loves Dan Campbell that much.
Maybe there's something about biting kneecaps that gives you extra immunization that you wouldn't have if you didn't bite kneecaps. So there I can see it. Yeah.
Did Matthew Stafford miss games with COVID?
I don't believe so.
I'm pretty sure he was one of the guys that made a thing about not getting vaccinated. So maybe you're onto something with that kneecaps thing.
Yeah. Although Stafford, what does that have to do with Stafford?
Because he wasn't vaccinated and didn't miss any time with COVID.
Yeah, but he's not with the Lions. I don't see why.
I was thinking Jared Goff.
Yep.
Hey, it's the first season of this. It might be the last week of it, but still. All right. Let's move on here to, I wanted to bring that game up because of how interesting that line is, but let's look at Colts at Jags here. And this is a name we haven't heard in a long, long time. Laquan Treadwell, over 38.5 yards passing.
I love this. Laquan Treadwell over 38.5 yards receiving rather. This is my favorite prop on the slate. FanDuel -114. I have been going over the Treadwell receiving props for at least the past few weeks for everyone who's been following along in the FTN bet tracker. So it's the same thing. Another week, another Treadwell over. In his 6 games since becoming a regular contributor in 3 wide sets, that was in week 12. He is number 1 on the Jags with 28 receptions and 381 yards receiving, and barely number 2, just behind Marvin Jones Jr. with 39 targets, 452 air yards, and a 49.5% Whopper weighted opportunity rating. So Treadwell, he's gone over 38.5 yards receiving in 6 straight games. Like the books, we've talked about this before. The books can just be slow, very slow to adjust to players once they have been moved into a new role. And Treadwell is very much in a new role in terms of the amount of snaps he's playing, the number of routes he's running, and the number of targets and the quality of targets that he is getting. It's not a great matchup that he has, but it doesn't really matter with the usage that he's giving. 38.5, that is such a low number for a guy who is basically a co-number 1 wide receiver on his team. I love Treadwell over 38.5 yards receiving this week.
I feel like he is just one of those guys who he was so hyped coming out of college. It was the same thing with kind of Cordero Patterson, although he's finally been starting to break out. Maybe Treadwell does have a future here.
By the way, both of them first round picks for the Vikings. Really, really sad to be that team. And if you saw both of those guys break out later in their careers with other teams, but Treadwell, I mean, he was just 21 years old as a rookie. Like he's actually played pretty well the past 6 weeks, and he's still just 26 years old. And like, I don't want to make too much of this because he probably does nothing the rest of his career. Like just, you know, the balance of probabilities, that is probably what happens. But he has actually done pretty well to give himself a foot of staying on that team. And they don't have really established wide receivers. Marvin Jones Jr. is old. He might not be on the team next year. It might be an entire new coaching staff. So, you know, Jones is kind of the pet of offensive coordinator Darren Bevel. Like he might not be there next year. So Jones could be gone. Laviska Shenault really hasn't done anything to develop. Like there's a non-zero chance that Treadwell is one of the top 2 receivers in that offense next year, and like a top 2 receiver for Trevor Lawrence, who like maybe will be ruined by what has happened to him, but like could develop into one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Like in dynasty leagues, you could probably acquire Treadwell pretty cheaply. I know this isn't the Freedman Fantasy Football podcast, but like I'm just saying, Like, I think Treadwell has a lot of things going for him in multiple markets. Like in redraft next year, he's probably going to be too cheap, assuming he's still on the team. In Dynasty, like, he could be acquired very cheaply. I think he has underappreciated upside given the situation he's in, and given, the first round draft pedigree, that's from years ago, but like, it still counts for something. So I don't know. Treadwell, he's a very interesting player to me from a multitude of angles.
I'm just saying, I'm old enough to remember when the discussion was, if the Jets get the number one pick, should Trevor Lawrence just pull an Eli and refuse to go to them so that the Jags would take him instead? I'm just saying, I remember when people were suggesting that. Well,
yeah.
How about now?
Yeah.
All right. Steelers at Ravens, this divisional matchup here. The Ravens need to win this game to have any hope of making the playoffs. But you're going on an under on the other side with Chase Claypool here. One last ride betting against Ben Roethlisberger's noodle arm.
Yeah, I'm looking at this at FanDuel, minus 114 odds. Chase Claypool under 57.5 yards receiving. The Steelers are road dogs. I think that they're going to look to keep this game close with the ground game with running back Najee Harris, and then the short passing game with Harris, and then wide receiver Deontay Johnson, and maybe even tight end Pat Freiermuth. So that doesn't leave much room for Chase Claypool, who's gone over 57.5 yards receiving in just 3 of 9 games since the week 7 bye. Tom, you're right. This pretty much is a bet against Ben Roethlisberger and his noodle arm, as you like to put it. I mean, Claypool has the talent. He himself has the talent to produce deep and to turn any one target into 60 yards. But I think in terms of the probabilities, I think the under is the sharp side here. I think this number should probably be closer to 52.5.
I'm with you on that. Like I said, I can't resist one last chance to bet against the noodle arm there. I think that last week was the Big Ben week, and this week they're on the road, and he's kind of already seeing retirement in the golf course in his future, and he's starting to check out here.
Yeah. What do you think Ben Roethlisberger does once he retires? I'm just gonna say, I don't think he would be a good commentator.
He would.
I think he'd be really bad.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to do it. I mean, he's never shown any inclination for the media or anything like that. I don't see him. I honestly see him going the Brett Favre route. Maybe not full Brett Favre, where he's hiding up in a tree hide, wishing Aaron Rodgers well, breaking a record. But I could see him just kind of growing a big ass beard and disappearing.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Hanging out with his offensive lineman, former offensive lineman, somewhere on a ranch. Yeah.
I could definitely see him and Alan Faneca just chilling.
Yes, for sure.
Titans at Texans is the next game up. Who knows? We might be able to bet on Derrick Henry props in the playoffs, but for now, Deonta Foreman over 67.5 yards rushing here.
Yeah, I love this. I got this at FanDuel, minus 114. Foreman over 67.5 yards on the ground. He leads the Titans with 89 carries over the past 5 games. That's the period of time since the team released Adrian Peterson. Now, granted, he is in a 3-person backfield. He's not getting the full Derrick Henry usage, but when he is on the field, he's being used very much like Derrick Henry. He's not getting the total volume of snaps that Henry got, but he is very much playing the Derrick Henry role. When he's on the field, they are giving him the ball 6 out of 10 times. So this is a pretty good situation for him in that the Titans need to win to get the number 1 seed. So they are highly motivated. They are big favorites on the road going against a team that isn't very good against opposing running backs. As big favorites, I think they're going to have a positive run-heavy game script that's going to feed Foreman extra opportunities. 67.5 yards feels, I'd say, 10 yards too low, to be honest. So I very much like Deontay Foreman in this spot. 67.5 yards rushing. I'm taking the over.
The next game that you have up here, it is the final painful New York Jets game of the season. They're going up against the Bills up in Orchard Park, and you're liking Stephon Diggs under 72.5 yards.
Yeah, and this has nothing to do with the competence of the Jets secondary. Tom, as you know, a totally incompetent unit. This has more to do.
Hey, that you take that back. because they have proven this year. Those corners, shout out to those corners. Eccles has been a phenomenal find. That they massively overplayed expectations.
I mean, I think you are wrong on so many counts here. I don't even know where to start. But when expectations are you're the worst unit in the league, and then in reality, you're maybe like the 4th or 5th worst unit in the league, I don't know what to say, Tom.
More so the cornerback unit. The safeties we've played like 9 different safeties this year. That was just tough. There were so many injuries, but the cornerbacks were nowhere near as trash as everybody thought they would be. And I think we actually do have a couple like players there that are going to be there for part of the long term.
I mean, Tom, Tom, come back. Tom, come back. I don't really know what to say. Like, the Jets are number 31 in defensive pass DVOA. That's Football Outsiders marquee metric. They're number 32 in defensive dropback expected points added, and number 32 in defensive dropback success rate. It's generous for me to say that they're just the 4th worst unit in the league. They probably really are the worst unit in the league. They're just not all-time bad the way that people feared they would be.
Both of their cornerbacks, Bryce Hall and Brandon Eccles, are really young, but they did make some plays this year, and they were not nearly as bad at coverage as some of those numbers suggest. I still think the Jets cornerback unit deserves some props. I understand what the stats say, but in terms of the actual cornerbacks, they've graded out fairly highly over Pro Football Focus.
Wow. I mean, that might be one of the greatest cell phones that anyone could ever say. But also, Tom, if you were not a Jets fan, would you be arguing this?
Absolutely not. But if I wasn't a Jets fan, I wouldn't notice it, because the narrative from the beginning of the season was the Jets cornerback unit is so green. They're so young. Like, they need to add a veteran. And why didn't they do that? They're going to get torched every week. The corners were not bad. The corners did not get torched nearly as much as you think. There's a reason Brandon Eccles now has a Tom Brady signed football in his house. And it's because he picked him off in that last game there. He's been making plays all year. Bryce Hall on the other side has also not been trash. I think these are 2 players who could actually be on the ascent. They're very young, and I think that they could actually end up being decent corners in this league. Again, the safety spot, very different story. They lost Marcus May midway through the season. He's probably out the door anyway, because we don't like keeping good players at safety, although shout out to the Jamal Adams trade. That was fantastic. But I think that the numbers that you see from the defense being bad points more towards just the overall issues of the entire defense than it does to the corners, who actually did hold their own.
Holding their own means that they died at the Alamo after a couple of days instead of dying immediately. That's what holding their own means. Tom Brady is 44 years old. At some point in his career, he's going to throw an interception to a mediocre cornerback who will be forgotten within a couple of years. So good for the Vikings. Sorry, good for the Jets cornerbacks on not being the worst cornerbacks in the league, but they are still pretty bad, Tom. Anyway, what I am saying here is that taking the Diggs under 72.5 yards receiving doesn't really have anything to do with how objectively bad the Jets defense is in defending the pass. It has more to do with the fact that the Bills are massive favorites at home, favored by more than 2 touchdowns. For the second half of this game, I think they're just going to take the air out of the ball and just get their win. Don't play a lot of offense. Like, don't have their main guys out there. Like, kind of try to take it a little bit easier in the second half so that they can have kind of like a pseudo-ish type of bye while still getting the victory. So, like, I don't think they're going to play Diggs the full game. I think they're going to try to rest some of their key players whenever they feel that they have enough of an advantage over the Jets. So I'm taking under 72.5 yards receiving. And like, I think that this is a decent line anyway, But then when you add in the context of these other things, of this being week 18, potentially getting some of these guys some rest, for some of the fourth quarter, I think that makes this all the more intriguing.
I'm just saying. Brandon Echols, he's a rookie, and I've liked what I've seen this year. That's all I'm saying out of him as a corner.
How many more years do you think he will be a starter at cornerback in the NFL?
I mean, my hope is a very long time. My hope is he's one of those rookies that actually pans out for the Jets, because every so often a shooting star flies, the planets align, and the gods decree that we will have a good cornerback for a little while.
Of course, that's the hope. That's the hope. What do you think is the reality? How many, if you had to set an over-under for how many years he will be a starter, like from this point forward, how many years he will be a starter at cornerback in the NFL, where would you set that line?
If you gave me 3.5, I'd take the over.
Tom, come on. Oh.
I'm just saying, the kid's a rookie, and he has shown some promise this year.
Oh, that is so good. Okay.
I'm just saying, the unit was supposed to be absolute trash, and I don't think they were, despite being so young, and I think that's very promising for them to build on.
Okay. If we even know each other in 3.5 years, and if I remember this in 3.5 years, I'm going to come back to you.
All right, deal.
Okay.
All right. Last game here for us. Is this? Yes, it is. 49ers at Rams. A reminder, the 49ers right now are a playoff team, and the 7 seed was a mistake. George Kittle under 4.5 receptions, Matt.
All right, I got this at DraftKings plus 120 odds. Kittle under 4.5 receptions with the uncertainty of quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. He's practicing. I think he's probably going to play this week, but that's not a certainty. Even if he does play this week, I mean, his hand is injured. I don't think he's going to be up to his normal degree of efficiency, and even that is questionable whenever Jimmy Garoppolo is fully healthy. So with all of the uncertainty surrounding Jimmy Garoppolo, and then with wide receiver Deebo Samuel reclaiming his place as the number 1 pass catcher in the offense, and with the return of running back Elijah Mitchell, I think it is likely that the 49ers are going to continue to underutilize George Kittle, who has just 3 receptions and 5 targets over the past 2 weeks. So I do think that there is some value on this number, 4.5 receptions plus 120. If I had to set a projection for this number, I think it would be, around 4 to 4.5. So I think that this is the right line, but getting a positive number on the under, I think makes this a very bettable prop. So I like Kittle under 4.5 receptions.
All right. Well, there we have it. Those are going to be our prop bets for the week. Is there any worse pick? Well, there certainly were some worse picks. Christian McCaffrey for one, but it had to have hurt some people in championship games, the fact that George Kittle's production has fallen off a cliff.
Oh yeah, certainly. Are you thinking championship game, specifically, or people?
Probably just a playoff run in the end.
Yeah, certainly. Kittle was awesome in the second half of the season. After he returned from injury, and then the past 2 weeks just absolutely destroyed you. If you had Kittle, you probably didn't get to the championship game because of what he did the week before that. So for 2 weeks in a row, he has certainly been a liability for the people who have started him.
I had a buddy who actually traded Kittle and Antonio Brown for Kelsey and Juju mid-season. And even cutting Juju, he made out like a bandit on that trade.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. All right, before we go here, Matt, I've actually got a couple soccer picks this week, if you don't mind. It's the AFCON, which is one of my absolute favorite tournaments in all of soccer. It's the African Cup of Nations. It is always a wild time. And there is some money to be made because a lot of bookmakers do not know these teams that well, and they can get you some decent lines here.
This is the most degenerate thing that we have ever done on the Degenerate Sports Betting Podcast. Go ahead. Let's do it.
Oh, also, just this is just in general. Seriously, one of the most fun tournaments. If you have BN Sports, go and watch it. These games are always hilariously fun. But I'm going right off the bat. The opening game is Cameroon versus Burkina Faso, and we are taking Cameroon minus the 165. They are the hosts of the tournament this year. They're not one of the top favorites to win it, but they are in the group of under 10-1 to go out and win the tournament here. They have a very good team. As people always say, their entire team is made up of bodyguards and track stars. They're either super physical or they're Usain Bolt. And it's so much fun to watch this team play. I love them at minus 165. I might take them on a goal and a half too, because the crowd's going to be ginned up for this game. They're a much better team than Burkina Faso. And I think minus 165, I'm comfortable paying that juice in a game that I feel very confident in them winning. The other one I've got is Egypt plus 145 versus Nigeria. Nigeria is actually the dog in this game, and Egypt has Mo Salah, who is still playing like the best player on the planet right now. Nigeria, one of their best players is Alex Iwobi, who is garbage. And if he's one of your best players, you have significant problems. They also have Bud Ugly Kits, in my opinion. Everybody else seems to like him. I don't understand why, but I'm liking Egypt with Salah at plus 145 there in that game.
Obviously, I know nothing about soccer. I'm totally fine with that, but I would bet on Egypt just because of Salah.
Yeah,
which might be a very donkey and degenerate thing to do. But if I had to bet on this game, I would be betting on Egypt.
Yeah, he's just a ridiculously filthy player, although I took great enjoyment in watching him lose to Cameroon in the final 2 Cup of Nations ago. So hoping the same thing happens here. But
here's a quick question. Very, very far afield, but related to soccer. So you mentioned Salah, who is, if not the best player in the world, right? Like one of the best players in the world. But soccer is a game where there are a lot of people on the field. There's only one ball to go around. And, my sense is that like the impact of a superstar in soccer probably is not as great as like the impact of a superstar in like basketball, for instance, where like it just feels like easier for a superstar to take over a game. I don't know if that's really true, but I imagine that is true. What are your thoughts on like the superstar effect in soccer? And is it possible that like the team with the superstar could potentially be overvalued because of like the name recognition that player has, and the fact that like he is just one guy on the field and there are, is it like 22 other guys on the field and it's a massive field? Like, it just feels like it's harder for one guy really to impose dominance in that game versus other competitive sports.
I'd say if the impact of a superstar in football is here and the impact of one in basketball is here, a soccer superstar is somewhere right in the middle there, because it is such a different game where an individual talent has an easier time shining through. You're not relying on a quarterback to get you the ball. You can, if you get the ball at your feet, you can do something magical with it. We saw it during the 2010 World Cup when, I want to say it was 2010, the Argentina-Germany one, where Messi single-handedly put Argentina on his back and played one of the best single runs of soccer that we've ever seen to get that team to the World Cup final there. Like a truly transcendent player can have a direct impact, especially when you get to the national team. They could shine through even more so, because you're, especially in a tournament like this, not dealing with, like, Salah's not going up against an entire other squad of Premier League players here. He's going up against some very domestic players from the Nigerian league, although Nigeria does have some Premier League talent. They don't have anyone quite on his level. And so that makes that talent gap a little more obvious, and it does make it easier for one of those guys to go out and have an amazing game.
That's interesting. So my totally uninformed thesis would be that in a situation like this, that the team that has the superstar probably is the one to bet on early in a tournament, and then later in a tournament might be the one to fade. Yeah,
That's
because
pretty accurate.
it feels like early on competition isn't as good, has a very good chance of progressing through the tournament, but then later on competition is tougher, and because maybe more eyes, more betting action is on the later games in the tournament, that might mean that the team with the superstar is a little more inflated at that point.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. As the public money comes in, they're going to be more likely to bet on them as well. But like you said, the competition is going to get stiffer towards the back end, whereas the front end, these group stage games, and especially because no one's seen Nigeria play very recently, I think that a lot of people that might be betting this game are going to look at that line and say, oh, well, Nigeria was good in the last World Cup. We're going to go ahead and take them here. But this Nigeria squad is not quite the same.
All right, Tomothy, you've talked me into it. I'm actually going to bet on this. I don't believe I'm going to put this in the FTN bet tracker for multiple reasons. One, I probably don't even have I'm not probably signed up to be able to put bets in for soccer. But I will be betting on this, and I will be tailing you and seeing everything that you are doing on this.
All right. Well, hopefully we can make some money here. I love international soccer. My last great betting success was the last World Cup, so I'm due. Or I should say the Euros.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully you are due.
Yeah. Also, if you want a long shot, Tunisia at 20-1 to win the tournament.
Okay. I'm definitely not betting on that.
But if you wanted to bet on it or anything else that we've talked about today, and you happen to live in the state of New York, it's a very special day because sports betting is finally getting ready to go live just in time for the college football championship and the NFL playoffs. And if you live in New York, you want to sign up for DraftKings right now, guys, there is a link that I have put in the show description below. Use that, and you are going to get, when you sign up, this isn't a deposit match bonus. You will get a $100 free bet for signing up with the link. You don't even have to put any money in. The link is right down below in the YouTube description. If you're listening to us on podcast form, I'm going to throw it in there, and you can find it. We're both going to be retweeting it from our Twitters right after this show. Guys, go sign up now. Literally free money.
Yeah,
go put it on Bama, and it's actual free money.
Yeah, it's pre-registration. As Tom said, $100 free bet. Sign up for it now. When DraftKings goes live, that money will be in your account. So definite thing that you should do, especially if you don't already have a DraftKings account for DFS or something like that. So yeah, definitely do this.
All right, guys. Well, Matt, that's going to do it for us here. Where can people find all the great work you're putting out each and every day?
You can find all of the content at FTN. On Friday, I am putting out, not this week, the fantasy football breakdown, but I am putting out my top 5 DFS plays. Yesterday, I published my best bets article. On Tuesday, I published the fantasy rankings, which I updated yesterday. I will update them tomorrow and Sunday for people who are in a really messed up league that actually happens to have week 18 count for something in fantasy. All throughout the week in the FTN bet tracker, I'm putting in my NFL sides, totals, and player props. And on Twitter, on YouTube, on your favorite podcast app, and on FTN, you can get all of the episodes of the Freedman Fantasy Football Show and the Degenerate Sports Betting Show. And always use the highly original promo code Freedman for 20% off at FTN. Tom, what's going on here?
Just saw some quick breaking news here that I feel like you're gonna want to hear. Jaguars interviewing Kellen Moore for their head coaching job. Good. I really do think the Cowboys need to get him out of there. It's just evident that he's impairing the genius that is Mike McCarthy. Right, Matt?
Goodbye, Tom. Goodbye. All right, that is the show. You can find me and Tommy V on Twitter at Matt F. the Oracle and TV at Work. Thanks for joining us, and see you next episode.